Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I feel very blessed to get the opportunity to talk to all of you. If you're a lady and you chose to come to my class, you drew the short end of the straw. My wife is teaching in the ladies' class right now as well, Marissa, so I apologize. You got the wrong Parker, maybe. You were looking for her if you're a lady. She is very sweet. That is most certainly true. I want to start today by asking you a question, and I'll keep it rhetorical for now, but I will make you give me an answer here later on. What places come to mind when you think of a mission field? For all of us, that can be very different answers, very broad, worldwide answers, but what comes to mind when you think of a mission field? So this is my family. Like he said, I have 4 sons under the age of 6, so they wear me out. They are a blessing from God, we'll put it that way. But this is my wife, Marissa, and we have been married for almost 12 years now. I'll give you a little backstory about who I am and where we came from. So I grew up very close to here. I grew up most of my life in Noble, Oklahoma, just south of here. I was a 12-year graduate from Noble Public School Systems. So if my spelling is wrong on the PowerPoints, that's probably why. But I've been around here for a while. My parents were very involved in the community of Noble. My dad was a councilman there for 20 plus years, and my mom was involved in various committees and things, and so we were very invested in the community of Noble. That's always been something that our family was invested in. We also did mission trips abroad. We used to go and build houses with Torch Mission Group in Honduras. Many of you may have done that or been part of that. And we'd go there for a few weeks. We'd go to Mexico every year and do some small mission trips, and we would do different things like that as a family. I left Oklahoma and went to school at Harding University. That's where I graduated from, and after studying abroad in Australia and Southeast Asia and New Zealand for a semester, I fell in love with the idea of majoring in Bible and mission work and trying to serve others abroad. My wife, Marissa, graduated from Freed Hardeman, so we're a mixed marriage. It turns out quite well, though. She graduated. She's older, smarter, and prettier than I am, so she graduated a year earlier than I did. And she moved down to Searcy, and I finished my last year of college there. And during my last year at Harding, we both developed a desire to serve God in New Zealand. That was placed on our heart. We wanted to go. And the cool and exciting thing for mission majors at Harding to do is a church plant. And so we were going to do a church plant. We were so excited, and we gathered around other people that wanted to do this exciting church plant. And by the time graduation came around, all of the other family members had, for various reasons, fallen out. They could not come. So our church plant came down to Marissa and I, and we both knew we were very young and did not have all of the answers, and that would have not gone very well. So we changed our mission focus, and we decided to go to Dunedin, New Zealand, and serve the Dunedin Church of Christ there. It's a small 15 regular individual member congregation. On a Sunday, we would get up to 40, 50 people some Sundays. Lots of visitors. And we decided we were going to go to this congregation for the sole purpose of serving them. That was our main mission focus. We weren't going to change the leadership. We weren't going to try to rock the boat. We knew we didn't have all the answers, and we knew we had a lot to learn. And so we committed to serve this congregation for 5 years. Our eldership was back in the States. We were fully supported by the United States, and so we took nothing from this congregation, and our goal was only to give to it for 5 years. When we were doing that, we had the opportunity to serve. I did a lot of preaching and teaching. I would teach on Sunday nights and preach once a month. We'd do Bible studies every day, one-on-one Bible studies with people in the community. We also found an opportunity to get into the school system in New Zealand. They don't have separation of church and state like we do, so they had something called Bible in Schools, which was being attacked heavily, but when we came in, provided us an opportunity to teach the Bible during lunchtime to kids that might want to know more about God. And so I'm behind that giant picture of Goliath there, but that's Marissa teaching these kids about David and Goliath in a public school. I also had the opportunity to become a chaplain in Dunedin, which is a very foreign concept to us, but they actually requested for me to be on their public school campus in that capacity as a spiritual presence on the school grounds. And we were like, sounds good. That's all. We would love to do that. And so we took advantage of that, and I was a chaplain there. I tell you all of that to introduce myself a little bit, but also to spend a little bit of time answering this question for myself, for all of you. The question I asked before. What places come to mind when you think of a mission field? Feel free to shout a couple out. What places come to mind when you think of a mission field? Anola? Oklahoma. Well, you're getting the cart before you're cutting me off there. That may be where I'm going. Yeah, not I know. But what other places come to mind? Anybody? Africa. That's a big one for a lot of people. High school. That's a mission field. The ghettos. India. Yeah, that's the population of India is humongous. It's a huge mission field. Work. You guys are answering. Yes.
Does it have to be far off? Can it be right in your neighborhood?
That is exactly where I'm getting, and you probably saw that coming. My goal today, one of my main goals, is to help us to understand really what a mission field is, and to try to drive home the fact that our greatest mission field, the place where we stand to make the longest lasting and biggest eternal difference, is probably where we live. It's probably what we call home. It's probably Inola or Oklahoma or Noble or Norman or Oklahoma City or any of these other places. But why oftentimes do people think about mission fields being something that's really far away, that you have to get on an airplane to go to? Why is that? I mean, for me, for most of my life, New Zealand was my answer to that question. If somebody said, what is a mission field? New Zealand, immediately. What is a mission field? Honduras. That's what would come to my mind. And it's, for many of us, it's because we've invested time there. We've built houses in Honduras, or we've lived somewhere for 1, 2, 5 years, or we visited these places, and we share the love of Christ, and we reap the rewards of a job well done there. And even if we're rejected in these places, we come home and we get to celebrate the work that God has done there. And what oftentimes I think happens is we forget that the place God can make the biggest difference is actually where Christ in us, the hope of glory, dwells every single day. That is where Christ can make the biggest difference. Because if Christ is living in us and our life is not our life anymore and we're living it to glorify Christ, the place where we spend the majority of our time is actually our greatest mission field. New Zealand is a mission field. Honduras is a mission field. Africa is a mission field. All of these places are mission fields. And there are amazing things God is doing there. And I am very passionate about the amazing things God is doing all over the world. But these places are not the only place God expects us to be on mission. They're not the only place. And if we come home and if we forget this, it's really hard sometimes to see our community as the true mission field. And I want to ask the question, why should we view our home as our greatest mission field? Like I said, it's where Christ dwells in us every single day. It's where we live, it's where we play, it's where we work, it's where we exist in the presence of people that don't know Christ. And we need to think about that. It's where we exist the most in the presence of people that do not know Christ. And then I think another reason why it has the potential to be our greatest mission field is because we value the people and we value this place above all other places and people, or else we wouldn't live here. We value Noble because we chose to live there and invest ourselves. We value the people there because we interact with them every single day. And we can reach out to people that we value, that we love, that we're invested in so much better than people that we only see for a short period of time in a far-off place. So I want to ask the question, why is it so hard to view this as our mission field? Why sometimes is it hard to view Oklahoma as a mission field?
I think it's because we like the idea of separating our spiritual life, like our church life, and then our normal everyday life.
Oh yeah. That's, for me, that is what I think is the biggest reason why it's hard to view our home as a mission field. First, I think it's really scary for some of us to accept the fact that those we really love, those that are near us, our friends, our family members, it's scary for us to think about the fact that some of them do not know Christ. Or even if they do know Christ, they don't know Him in a deep enough way to affect their life and to affect their eternal destination. It's scary for us to think that, as mentioned today, our brother-in-law may not know Christ and is waiting for us to ask Him to do something about it. It's scary to think those we love don't know God. The other reason why I think it's really hard to view Oklahoma as a mission field, or your community or your home as a mission field, is it comes at extremely high social risk. And oftentimes, sadly, we think it leads to little to no reward. If I reach out to my coworker and they reject the gospel, that'll have a lasting social implication for me and them, potentially. If I reach out to my brother-in-law and he rejects the gospel or rejects me, is that going to have a lasting negative social repercussion? Yes. It'll affect us. It comes at extremely high social risk, and sometimes there's little to no reward. Now, this is almost the opposite when we go abroad. It comes at little to no social risk. These people don't know us. We show up, we're excited, we came there to serve, we have all the energy that comes from getting on a plane and going to a new destination, and we serve these people, and if they accept the gospel or if they're blessed by it, we come back, and it's a huge, there's so much reward in that. And if we go there and they reject the gospel, then we come back home and we never see these people again. Little to no risk and high reward. It's exactly the opposite whenever we reach out to our community. But that is why we must do it.
But we didn't plant a seed, even though we just said something.
I think Christians always plant seeds everywhere we go. The other reason why I think it's so hard to view Oklahoma, our home, as a mission field is that it truly does require all of us. And I don't mean all of us. I mean, it does require all of us, but it requires all of us as an individual. It requires your time, all your money. It requires all of the things that you value. This has been very hard for me to accept coming back to Oklahoma. Like we talked about before, I don't work in full-time ministry anymore. That's not what I do every day. I run a small business. I run a pawn shop in Noble, Oklahoma, that my dad has owned since 2007. I came back and I bought out half of it, and we're partners in a pawn shop in Oklahoma. And people laugh at, we went from mission work in New Zealand to running a pawn shop. And whenever we were leaving New Zealand, we came back to Oklahoma, and I thought, this is such an awesome mission field right here. Every day I interact with people that don't know God. They come into my building and they need something. And I am there to provide them with monetary things that they might need, but also I have an opportunity to introduce God to them. And whenever I came back from New Zealand, I thought this would be so easy to do. I had plans to, do Bible studies in the back of the store, and we have Bibles set out that are free out front. And if anybody is seeking to know more about God, I was ready to provide opportunities. And it is so much harder than you would think to do that every day. To devote time that you should be devoting to a business or your life or your family or whatever it may be, to devote that to somebody else the same way you would on a mission field overseas. It's hard to do. It requires all of us. It requires our whole heart. It is something that I don't believe we can do without Christ living in us. It's something I don't think humans are capable without God. So, that brings me to really why you all came, to learn about the Gospel Outreach Program. There are 1,000 ways in which Christians have devoted themselves to reaching their community around Oklahoma and Noble and the homes in which they live. This is just one of the ways in which the Westside congregation has tried to facilitate some organic outreach into our home. Our community is our greatest mission field, and it left us asking, how can we reach out to these people? How can we not just have this as an expectation of individual Christians with no follow-up or no real planning or no support by the eldership or no support by the congregation? How can we bridge the gap between the world and church? Because just asking the question, would you like to go to church with me on Sunday, it's not the only way God calls us to reach out to our community. I'm not saying there aren't people that will respond to that. There are people that are waiting for you to ask them to go to church with you. And those people, bless their heart for being so open that they're willing to do that. But that is not the majority of the people I've encountered. Most people, I would say majority, vast majority of the people I've asked to go to church with me on Sunday don't. And when I ask them, in the back of my mind, if that's the only way I'm reaching out to them, I almost expect the response, thank you, yeah, I'll try to make it, or we'll see what the family's doing, or yeah, possibly knowing full well that that's not what they desire to do. So how do I take it a step further? How do I really reach the heart of that individual? Because simply asking people to come to a certain church on Sunday cannot be our only strategy of outreach towards the community. People are seeking truth. We've heard about that all day. They are seeking truth. How can we provide them with the truth of God? Not just a building that they may have biases against or history with. Not just people that they may have known for 10, 20 years and they know the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they don't want to just come to church on Sunday with those people. How do we introduce them to Christ and not just a congregation? There's tons of ways that we can do that. Go Group is one of the ways we've tried to do that. Some members at Westside have tried to do that. The goal of the Gospel Outreach Group, so Go Group stands for Gospel Outreach Group. The goal of Gospel Outreach Group is to provide an opportunity for somebody to see a family living love outside the boundaries of the church building. We try to welcome all people. Now, this is a summary of it, and I'll break it down for you if you're curious what we really do. But what we try to do is welcome all people of any race, religion, sex, gender, orientation. We try to welcome anybody that is in our circle of influence into a home where there's good food and good people and good questions. Questions about topics like Jesus, the Bible, new creation, the Holy Spirit, salvation, the church, gospel, peace. We don't have a speaker at this group. We start with a prayer. We grab some food, then we sit at a table, and then we discuss deeper topics, like a family would discuss important things around the dinner table. That's the goal of Go Group. We try to provide and encourage visitors a chance to speak their true thoughts and ask true questions that they may have had on these topics. We don't pretend to know everything, and like a family, we seek to answer these questions together as people that are on the same team trying to know God. We thank everybody, we pray, and then we leave, and we only do this group one time a month. Once a month. It might not seem like the well-oiled, over-planned, high-efficiency ministry machine you see coming out of churches today that involves bouncy castles and all of the other things that people try to reach out into the community with. It's a bit more organic. It's a bit more relational in its approach. Our goal in this group is not to baptize hundreds of people at our once-a-month meeting, although if God is willing, we are happy to accommodate that. But that is not our goal, is to just dunk people in the water as fast as possible and win them to something they don't understand. The goal is to have a place and a time and people that provide an opportunity for true seekers to explore truth. Our prayer is that if a true seeker desires to study more, maybe the person that brought them can do a one-on-one Bible study with them outside the times of this group. That they can dig deeper and answer these questions that are opened up by the time at Go Group. This is a quality over quantity mindset that we're trying to implement. And it's fueled by members that desire to get alongside their friends and their family and people that they know, that they're close to. This group of people that has the highest social risk, they're trying to get alongside them for the purpose of them coming to know the gospel of Christ. An old missionary once told me this. He said, what we win them with is what we win them to. And it may well have been the best advice anybody has ever given me when it comes to ministry or mission work or anything that involves reaching out with the gospel of Christ. What are we trying to win people to? Because we have to make sure that's what we are winning them with. Are we trying to win them to fancy new ministries? When we came back from New Zealand, there was a congregation that we drove by, and they were having an outreach event. And I don't want to talk about anybody that's trying to reach out to the community, but I mentioned bouncy castles earlier. It was just a bunch of bouncy castles, and I just thought it was so funny. What happens when the bouncy castles leave? Do these people still stay that are brought in by the bouncy castles? What we win them with is what we win them to. Are we winning people to fancy ministries? Or are we trying to win people with fancy preachers or fancy sermons or fancy lessons? Or are we trying to win people with Christ and to Christ? Are we connecting people's hearts and minds with the truth of Christ? Because truthfully, fancy ministries will always fade away and those people will leave. Fancy preachers will say something wrong and they will be rejected and those people will scatter. But if we win people to Christ, with Christ, they will be His forever. And that's what we need to remember. That's what we always need to do whenever we're trying to reach out to the community. The goal of Go Group is not to win people to a fancy new ministry. The goal of Go Group is to win people with Christ to Christ, with the truth of Christ to the truth of Christ. So I want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of Go Group, so that way you actually know what is going on. And if you want to try to implement something like this, you have some tools. But our goal here was to keep it as organic as possible, to make it look like a family meal. It doesn't mean there wasn't a ton of planning and effort gone into this group and different things that we've tried to implement to make it successful. Just because it's organic doesn't mean it's easy. In fact, oftentimes a ministry that feels organic is there's a lot that went into that. The first thing that we did was we invited members in the congregation. We didn't hire new ministers to head off this group. We didn't establish just a couple people that are in charge of doing this. We opened it up to the congregation and we invited mission-minded members to take part and to run it. It is run solely by mission-minded members. There's no full-time ministry staff that is the leader of this effort. It is just mission-minded Christians in the Westside congregation. We opened it up on a Sunday morning. We invited people to be part of it, and we had a huge response. And we had such a response that we thought we may have to split this into two groups already immediately because we had so many people. We didn't think we could fit in one house. And that was a good problem to have. But what we discovered was it was actually a blessing to have that much manpower that can share the burden and the load of responsibility amongst them. So we had a response of about 40 members, and these are people that have, what I've came to find out, these are people that have been doing mission work in their community all along, far before this group was ever established. There were people doing Bible studies that were ongoing, people that had years of Bible study experience with their friends and their neighbors. And they were just excited to have an opportunity for the church to support them and for us all to be together in that. So we invited members to take part. And pretty much all we did was provide an opportunity and a community for these mission-minded people to work. We tried to become a support system for each other. We met initially and we had a couple meetings talking about what the group would look like and what we wanted it to do. And what we found out was our target group of people, we wanted to be this group that I talked about before that has high social risk. because we thought that that has the highest probability of success. The people that we know, that we love, that we interact with, this became our target group of people. And we started looking for what another missionary I used to know, he would call them truth seekers. This is what he called them, truth seekers. And I thought it was such a good way to summarize the type of person that we're looking for. We're looking for somebody that wants to know the truth of God. Because not everybody does at whatever stage of life they're in, but there are those that are truth seekers. They're hungry for truth. I just heard about campus ministry in this room before this, and he just talked about on campus how hungry these people are for truth. How hungry in today's world some people are to know something true. So we looked for these truth seekers. Well, how do we find truth seekers? We look for people that we might know, friends, family members, co-workers, acquaintances, people that run coffee shops that we go to regularly, that come around us and maybe they ask good questions. You're like, oh, that was a good question. Would you like to explore that or know more? These people are curious. They're open-minded. They're willing to hear somebody else's opinion and weigh it against their own and discover which one has more validity. These people are people, though, we found out that may be unwilling to come to church at just an invitation. Would you like to come to church with me on Sunday? Oftentimes these people would say no to that, which was interesting. It made more sense as if you think about it. If you've lived in a community, let's say Noble, for 20 plus years, you know everybody in that little community. In my high school, there were 165 people that graduated, and I knew every single one. And they all still live in Noble. And they have known me since kindergarten. Every mistake I've made, everything I've done in my past, they know it all. And it's the same with congregations. There are people in our community that if we invited them to a church, they'll say no because their grandpa 10 years ago went and somebody said something to them and they don't want to ever darken the doors of that place again. That's another reason why we can't just leave it only to inviting people to church. We have to have some sort of bridge and we have to win them to Christ. And then we can introduce them to the family of God. So we found this was our target group of people. Initially, Go Group was broken into, and it still is, I say we meet once a month. We really meet twice a month. We'll have something called a planning meeting. And in this planning meeting, it is just for members. So we have one meeting that is the meal meeting, and we have one meeting that is a planning meeting. And initially, our planning meetings took a lot longer when we were trying to figure out what this group was going to look like and how the group would develop. But the goal of the planning meeting was for it to be only for members and for us to get all the logistical stuff, all the stuff that bogs people down out of the way amongst ourselves so that we can really devote ourselves to the heart of the mission during the meal group. So we discuss anything that's related to the topic of the mission that we are on. We discuss the logistical information, food, and the times that we're going to meet and places like that. We would discuss the questions for the upcoming meeting. But we would also use each other as sounding boards in our own individual outreach efforts. And this is something that was not planned but developed out of this group and I think is one of the primary blessings of Go Group. It's that you have access to a group of mission-minded people that have done ministry in this community for years by themselves. And we can use one another to benefit one another. If you have a question that somebody proposed to you, it's probably not the first time that question's ever been asked. Somebody around you in the congregation has probably opened the Bible with somebody with that very same question. So we try to use these resources that we all have that we use. So we talk about the conversations we've had with visitors and with others. We talk about questions the visitors may have. We try to get a feel for the group that we're going to be evangelizing to. We also encourage members who have active on ongoing studies. We pray in this group, and we try to do everything we can to support one another as we do outreach individually outside of this time. So that's the planning meeting. These planning meetings reminded me of what we would do as a mission team in New Zealand. We'd meet on a Tuesday in the building, and we would talk about our ongoing Bible studies. We'd talk about the people involved. We'd talk about the questions they had. We'd pray over these people. We would be conscious and intentional in our outreach, and we would use this time to sharpen each other in that ministry. That brings us to the second meeting that we have, and it's the meal meeting. So the meal meeting, like I said before, we would meet in somebody's house. And this is a primary element of Go Group. I could spend the whole rest of this lesson talking about the power of a shared meal with other people. But we all know the power that a meal has. We know it in a physical family. Whenever a family gathers around a table together and eats and talks, we know the power that that has to connect each other. We also know the power that a meal has as a spiritual family. It's why we have potlucks and things like that. It's why we eat together. It's why we're going to eat together here in just a moment. Food has a powerful influence on one another, especially when we sit together and we talk like a family. And so this was a primary element of it, food and gathering at somebody's house. We would gather at somebody else's house also intentionally. It'd be far easier to gather at the church building where we have all these resources and all all the tables set up and all the chairs organized. But we meet at somebody's house because it's a neutral location. And what we found was when you walk into somebody else's house with a visitor next to you, you are both visitors in that house. You're level with them. You're on the same page as them. And it provides you a mindset and an opportunity to help them feel more welcome and more included. Both of you don't know where the bathroom is. You both have to ask somebody where the bathroom is. Simple things like that that help people connect and organize together. So we bring food and we share it. I do not have to tell you how good the members of congregations around Oklahoma are at making delicious food. It is one of the gifts we have. Hospitality is a powerful thing that we use and that we should be using. So we bring the food. Sometimes we have a budget and the congregation supports the providing of food if need be, but we have never needed it because the ladies in the congregation, the ladies in Go Group, produce delicious food that we share together. We gather around tables of 4 to 5 people, or 4 to 5 tables of 6 to 8 people. And we eat, and then we have a table discussion together. What we found out was we needed a way to organize who sat at what table. But like I said, we want to keep this organic. We don't want it to be this over-engineered ministry thing that actually does more harm than good. We want it to feel like a family meal, but that's a very hard thing to keep organic. What we found out was we'd have a lot of tables with just visitors, and then we'd have some tables with just members, and so we needed a way to organize this. And somebody came out with a great idea. Well, why don't we have name tags? Because we're all visitors. We all need to know each other's names. And on that name tag, we'll put a little dot with a color on it. And the host, when they set up these 4 to 5 tables, will put a color at one of those tables, and we can go and sit at that table. And what that allowed us to do was we could organize how we sat at different tables. We could have a healthy number of visitors and people, and we could also use it to pair different levels of where people are at or how different conversations might progress as the evening went on. So if you have somebody that's been going to Go Group for months and they want a deeper conversation, or if you have a new visitor that may just want to explore some topics at this level, you can organize that with this if we need. So that's something we talk about in the planning meeting, but it is also something that we talk about in a group me. And so we have this group me, which we use, and this is a little, I just took a snapshot. I tried to erase the names, but this is a little snapshot of what it might look like. This is where we handle all the logistical details. We also use it for prayer requests. It's heavily used for that. We use it to, when we're studying, if you need support immediately, you text it out on this group me, and you have access to 50 mission-minded members of your congregation that are ready to support you and to help you. So we use it for questions and support in one-on-one Bible studies. We use it to organize the tables. We use it to encourage members. And we use it in every way that we do the planning meeting, but we always have access to it. So like I took this snapshot because it was kind of cool. Here you see, this is the silver table. Stuart, Tracy, Sharon, Brett, Jennifer, and then we have a V next to Ryan, Lindsay, and Lester. So we know those are our visitors. And those visitors are probably connected to somebody that's at the table, but not always. And that's just one table. The top was the rest of the tables. And we can organize this down to the very day. In fact, here, this is my wife, Marissa. She said, sorry for the late notice. Friends of ours, Justin and their baby boy, will be joining us tonight. Justin was in our wedding. He and Nick go way back. We're really excited that they want to come. And then Jimmy Ann, I'll also bring salad with poppy seed chicken. Glad they're coming, Marissa. We'll get them plugged in. Jimmy Ann, Katie Blank will also be coming. And then she gives an address so that we all know where we're going. And we're reminded, and we can copy that address and send it to our visitors. And it just really takes all of the logistical details out and makes it very seamless and where we can support one another. Like I said, it's also heavily used for prayer requests. And so we're always in communication with each other about what might need brought before God in prayer. So I'm going to speed this along. I knew I'd go long. The next thing we try to do is we try to have a real family-like conversation around this meal. Our goal is for it to be organic. We technically do have a group facilitator at each table, so that way conversation can progress in a certain way. But the goal of that group facilitator is really not to be the one speaking. Our goal is for all the members to share the responsibility of facilitating this group discussion and to really intentionally try not to give all of the right answers to these questions, to allow visitors to think about these questions, to allow visitors to answer so that they can work through these things on their own. They have preconceptions and biases, and they have opinions, and they have things they're wrestling with, and there is nowhere for them to ask these questions legitimately in a group of Christians that love them and want to help them answer it. And this is a place where we really try to let that be part of it. If somebody has a hard biblical question or a hard question, they're able to answer it, and we patiently and lovingly try to help them explore the deeper truth that is associated with that. The goal of all members is to help visitors explore questions. This is what some of the questions look like. They started out very broad. This was one about truth. We'd have 5 questions, no more, sometimes less. And they would be very open-ended. How does truth differ from perception or belief? What do Christians believe is the truth and why? So trying to provide an opportunity for a visitor to speak, not just a Christian speak. A member and a visitor can both answer that question. And it's actually very interesting to see what a visitor thinks Christians believe is true and why. That helps us to understand where their heart is. But we always root these things in Scripture. This is where the answers to all these questions always are. And so we have Scriptures provided to help us answer these questions. We want to tie people to God's Word. So that is where they are looking for truth. There's always a biblical answer provided by Scripture. Questions are targeted to create deeper thought and challenge preconceptions. They're also worded to encourage visitors to speak their true thoughts and beliefs. So like I said, it started out very broad with questions like love, truth, the Bible, the church, new creation, sin, salvation. We started taking it a little step further, talking about Israel and Exodus and covenant and betrayal. We are also trying right now so this is a growing and evolving ministry outreach effort. We're testing what works and what does not. So right now we are testing this. So it's very different than these past questions where we only had 5 very basic questions. Now we're testing out to see if it's a little bit more like a Bible study, what will the response be? And so what we found out, we have a side A and a side B. These are a little bit more the same questions but worded a little broader. And these are the same questions but more specific and targeted. And so depending on who's in your group, you can choose one side or the other. And there's also almost like a Bible study type portion before we get to the questions. So this is what we're trying out right now, and we're seeing how it progresses. So what are the results of Go Group? There have been baptisms as a result of this. That is not our only goal for doing this. It's a quality over quantity mindset ministry. We're trying to tie people to Christ, and that takes time. We're trying to reach their hearts and not just their physical bodies, and that takes time. And so there have been baptisms as a result of this. There's also been people introduced to Westside, people that do say yes to, will you come to church with me on Sunday as a result of this? But the biggest, one of the biggest blessings that I've seen personally is what it has done for the members at Westside that are involved in it. Finally, we get to see one another fighting the good fight in real time in our hometowns, reaching out to people, trying to bring them to Christ. I have watched elders at Westside that I barely knew. I have sat at a table with them, with a visitor of mine, and watched them answer a difficult question with love and grace and patience. I would have never gotten to see that outside of a group like this. I have watched fellow members that I did not know were this evangelistic in their mindset. I have watched them pursue people that they know to reach God. It's been, in my view, this may be one of the primary blessings of Go Group, is seeing the church alive and well and working and fighting. So I want to end us with this. Sent. I love this. Somebody did some great graphic design work. I love this little airplane here. Sent. Where has God sent you? Marissa and I have been in Oklahoma now longer than we were ever in New Zealand. This year marks the first year in which we've been in Noble as a married couple with 4 boys longer than we were ever in New Zealand. And if I stop and think about it, the airport I've spent the most time in, and all the places I've traveled in the world, and I've been very blessed in that, the airport I've spent the most time in is the Oklahoma City airport. So where has God sent us? Where has He really sent us? Has He sent us abroad, or has He sent us right here? And that's what I want to leave you with today. I want you to believe and to know that God has sent you here. And this is your mission field. This is where you stand to make the truest and lasting eternal difference in somebody's life. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Let's go get some lunch.